Thank you everyone, and I hope the clicker works. Just before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we gather here today, and also pay my respects to elders from other countries around Australia and everybody here today. And thank you very much to Cancer Australia for this invitation. I think it's fantastic to have these events and to talk about the work that's being done and what else needs to be done as well. So I feel privileged to be here as part of it. So I work at the Cancer Council, and what I'm going to do is just build on from what Tracy's talked about in relation to cancer education and the development of an accredited unit of competency around cancer for Aboriginal health professionals. And it's HLT AHW 035. And so just a bit of background, so an overview of my presentation, I'll do a bit of background on how we came to develop the unit and the reason, the gap in knowledge, I guess, some information around the development of the module, some information around the pilot delivery and how we went through the accreditation process, and also a validation of the unit, which was done just a couple of weeks ago, and some challenges and lessons learned along the way. To what we're doing. And I just wanted to mention there's a bit of artwork throughout this presentation which is done by a local South Australian artist called Alan Sumner, and I know there'll be SA people here that will know Alan, so I just wanted to acknowledge his beautiful work, that his artwork. So just to give you some background, a lot of the work that we do at Cancer Council and in South Australia around Aboriginal cancer related activities all stems from a forum that we had in 2006, which was called the Perconurity, a Kaurna word meaning healing messages forum. And that forum was a 2-day state forum that really talked around a whole range of different issues for Aboriginal people in South Australia affected by cancer. And we had people there that were, survivors, people there that had lost loved ones to cancer. There were service providers, so we heard from their perspectives, and we also learned about, screening and prevention and all of those things. And it was a really great couple of days because there were people from all around the state. And at the end of those 2 days, there was a whole list of recommendations that we could move forward as a state, the government, and what Cancer Council could do and other health organisations. And that is the basis for a lot of the work that we do in South Australia. And I must say that when I'm up here talking, I'm just talking on behalf of a whole group of people that have been involved in this work. So I'm just the person talking about it, but there's been a lot of people involved in this work. Some of the recommendations from the forum were around the need to have more educational opportunities around cancer for Aboriginal health professionals, and also for community. Community members are saying we needed to know more about cancer. What is this? Why is this happening to our communities? What is it? And other recommendations were around the workforce, around support services and improving the understanding of service providers around what it means for Aboriginal people affected by cancer. And I just wanted to make a point that Gail talked about, the need for more Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people working in the cancer field. And I think that's something that was highlighted at the forum. And I hear this all the time, and I think it's a great point to just reinforce. And I had a conversation with someone this morning at morning tea about it, and it does keep coming up. So the funding for this development of this unit came through the Commonwealth Government through a project called CanNet, which was an initiative of the Commonwealth Government a number of years ago. And so CanNet SA took it upon themselves. There's two priorities. One was around cancer education for Aboriginal health professionals, and the other was around to support the provision of Aboriginal cancer care coordinator role at one of our public hospitals, and you'll hear from those two people tomorrow around the work they do. And it builds on the work that the education model that we worked on in South Australia, built on models, as Tracy talked about, that had been developed earlier. Cancer Council New South Wales developed a model that was a trainer-trainer program. Then Cancer Council Queensland again took that and developed that. Catherine Jacker did some great work there, and she's here today. And then, of course, what's happened in WA. So it's all built on, this work is built on, and what we did with this project in South Australia was to get it to be an accredited unit of competency. So it was just sort of like the next step in the progression. And so that was the aim when we were looking at developing it. The aim was around looking at it gaining accreditation. It's a bit disconcerting having all these photos taken on you. Anyway, sorry, I wasn't trying to put you off, but so this model that we developed was done in partnership. All this work is done in partnership. You know, we being Cancer Council can't do this on our own. And so we work with peak bodies like the Aboriginal Health Council, which is the peak Aboriginal community control body in South Australia. And it was a partnership between AXA, CanEd SA, which was sat within SA Health, and Cancer Council. And to start off with around developing the model, the first thing we had to do was to look and see whether there was anything similar that had been developed within the vet training world, so within on the government training, models of training that they have, to see whether there was anything like that, because there's no... What they would say is if you wanted to get something accredited, there's no point in developing something that's already been developed. And so we researched that. And then once we thought there was nothing that was really appropriate, because what we wanted to do is not adapt something. We wanted to build something and work with the Aboriginal community to build something that was actually going to be specifically for Aboriginal health professionals. You know, it wasn't an adapted piece of work, really, so that it really incorporated all the necessary requirements for Aboriginal health professionals. And so we applied to ASQA and the Community Services Health and Industry Skills Council, because they're the regulators, they're the peak bodies that need to say yes or no. And so once we got the go-ahead from those organisations, then we put together a course advisory group. And the whole aim of this was to have a national perspective, because we knew there had been work done in other states. And so what we wanted to do was to have some training that could be used by any Aboriginal RTO across Australia. And that, that the aim was also to have the resources that we developed to be able to be utilised by any RTO as well. So that, one of the most expensive things is developing the resources, and so we wanted to make sure that what we developed had a national perspective. And so the course advisory group reflected that. We had people from Alice Springs, from the Northern Territory, from WA, as well as, so there were Aboriginal health professionals, there were people from the industries that were relevant to developing this course, all involved on this course advisory group, and they steered how this, what the content of the module, how that came to be. And we did that with a national perspective, so to make sure that, like I said, that it was appropriate for any Aboriginal RTO to pick up and run with. One of the things that we wanted to make sure is that when we developed this work, that it was going to be relevant for people, and so that was really important. And so they really steered how it was developed. And so from that, we did, over a number of time and a lot of consultation and working on models that had been developed before, we developed these guides. The facilitator's guide, the assessment tools, and the learner's guide. And so these were developed back in 2012. And so we're still working on them, but they build on a lot of what Tracy was talking around, making sure that it was culturally competent, looking at what information needed to be in there, all of those things. And so there's a lot of blood, sweat and tears that has gone into this work, but we're actually really proud of what was achieved. And so then we went to the pilot delivery, and we delivered this at the Aboriginal Health Council, and it was a 5-day pilot. And so we've got a very elite group of people who took part in that, and one of them's here today. So we had 10 health professionals from right across different areas of South Australia, which was fantastic. There was lots of, I could talk a lot about the actual training itself, but I guess some of the key things that came out from that was we allowed time for people to share their experience. This is adult learning, and so the important component is you build on what people already know. And so we knew that the people that were in this unit that came to this training all had great experience, they had great knowledge, they had knowledge that they could share with other health professionals in that room. And so I think in the end, the trainers, we learnt much more more than what we were training people. And I think the participants found that they learned a lot from the other participants as well. And one of the key components was actually allowing time for that discussion, allowing people to interact and allowing people to share stories and experiences. And you know, what happens in Ceduna might be different to what happened in Port Augusta to what happened in Murray Bridge. You know, similar things, but having a safe space to share those experiences and to learn from them is really important. And so I think having the 5 days is really key. And also, I think that when we were developing the unit, we were wondering about what level to pitch it at. You know, should it be at a Cert 4 or Cert 3? And then we had people from the Northern Territory were saying that, you know, a lot of our health workers are Cert 2 and Cert 3. And it was very clear the course advisory group felt that this is a really heavy-duty piece of learning that people are doing. It's very emotional, as you all know. And so it was felt that it really should be at a reasonable level, because the information that you're learning and gaining and sharing is very personal, and also is at a certain level. So we felt that people had to have a certain life experience, and I guess already have some training and learning to really be able to have some of this information given to them. And that was the guidance of the course advisory group. And so we really made sure there was enough time for people to share. And another a really important component of the training, as Tracy mentioned, was a site visit. So we took people to, you know, the radiotherapy unit within the main hospital, so that when they go back to their communities, they could let people know what it looks like to go to a big public hospital. We took people out to the Cancer Council, because they could look at our helpline, and making sure that health workers knew there was somewhere they could call if they needed assistance and support, or they could ring on behalf of their clients. Because, you know, part of one of the key things around this training is also around the networking, and also knowing where you can go for support. We also took them out to Kangawadley, which is a fantastic service in South Australia, that is a primary healthcare service where Aboriginal patients who have had treatment, not necessarily for cancer, but for any treatment, surgery, I think, in particular. And there's a couple of girls from Kangawadley, so they will tell me if I'm saying the wrong thing. But then they come back, they go from their treatment back into Kangawadley to stay until they're actually ready to go home, back to their communities. And so it was great for the health workers who might have sent clients there, could actually see what Kangawadley looked like, and, you know, sat around and had a couple with people, and there were clients there that they knew and things like that. So that was great. So while the site visits are time consuming within a training, you know, within training, I think in this particular instance it's really important. And so we would, you know, really, it came back in the feedback that people found that very valuable. There was an evaluation that was taken. We did a pre and a post and a 6-week follow-up. One of the key things that came out of that evaluation was around the need for more information on palliative care. Thank you. Around palliative care. And so that's an important element that we need to consider, and even perhaps including a hospice visit. Okay, so I guess looking again, I've explained around the accreditation, you know, we looked to see what their need was and that it was unique. So there was nothing like it that we could find that had really, at an accreditation level, that had been developed. And so we sought letters of endorsement from the key industry and the key Aboriginal health organisations, and then we submitted to the key regulating bodies. And it took around 6 months to actually go from, once the unit, you know, we got the sort of the development of the unit and going through that whole process and then sending it off, it took around 6 months to gain accreditation. And that was the original code. If you look up on the government code, that was the original code, but it's since been reviewed. And so this is the module now. That's a copy of that. And I was going to try and do something fancy, because you can actually click on that and go to the website, but because I've got time constraints, I won't. So it's an elective within the Cert 4 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander primary health care, but I believe it's also in Cert 3 and it's also at the diploma level, and you can look that up and have a look at it. Okay, so we just recently took part in a validation process as well, which is an important component of training, to make sure that the training is on track. Really around the assessments and the resources. And so according to the regulators, the process again, we opened it up to have it as a national focus for a national participation. So we have people from different states participating in the validation. And the outcomes really, which are the key things, is that it reinforced what we had originally put together, which was great. There are some changes to be made, and they're being currently done at the moment, but in essence it was still a very worthwhile learning, which was wonderful. And in part of this process, we also developed a relationship with another Aboriginal RTO, because the Aboriginal Health Council didn't have capacity at this moment to be involved. So we did this in partnership with Ngunnawal, which is another Aboriginal RTO in South Australia. So just a couple of challenges which I really want to quickly highlight. And I think that we need to be really mindful when we're doing any of this training around the capacity of Aboriginal RTOs and what their priorities and needs are. You know, I felt that when we developed this unit, I thought, fantastic, we've got this great unit. Every RTO, Aboriginal RTO in Australia is going to want to do this, you know. They're going to take it up and it's going to be fantastic. And that's just not the case. We've run the pilot in 2012, and we're now going to run the second lot of training this year at Nunk, but we've not been able to run it since then, even though the work is there and we've got the resources, but it's just the need and the priorities of the RTO that we're working with didn't meet. So I think that's a really important thing. And we need to make sure that we work with the RTO's educators so that we're able to upskill them and work with them. Because even though it might be on scope for an RTO to deliver, it may not necessarily be within the capacity of an educator to do that. And so we, being Cancer Council or Cancer Australia, or the organisations that are, you know, wanting to, I guess, push this education, that we are able to give them the capacity to do that. And it's a long-term commitment. This is not something you do and then tick the box and you go away. This is a long-term commitment. Okay, so they're just the lessons learnt. I can see Gail's breathing down my neck. So that's all pretty obvious, I think. There was a thank you at the end, but they've cut that off, so I apologise. There we go.